Boom! All right, ladies and gentlemen, scaling smarter, the secrets behind Lawelawe Management Group's explosive growth. Let's get into this program. Here we go.
Shut up and sit down.
Look, a business can give you everything you want in life. Prestige, wealth, freedom. It can also take everything away from you. This show is for those who are willing to take that risk. These are the real life stories of entrepreneurs. But before we start, I have one small favor to ask. Please leave a comment. It can be advice, critiques, tips, feedback, or share this with someone because your engagement is the most valuable and most powerful form of social currency. So thank you, and welcome to another episode of Business Bros. Business Bros, he's led billion-dollar business transformations, helped federal contractors scale with surgical precision, and now runs a multi-million-dollar enterprise that's redefining managed services. So get ready to learn from one of the sharpest minds in strategic growth. Please welcome to the show the CEO of Lawelawe Management Group, Mr. Jerald Forrest. Jerald, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
All right, let's jump into this thing, man. You have that billion-dollar word attached to your name. Give me a little bit of background. Where did you come from? How did you get to that status of having $1 billion in revenue?
Yeah, sure. Well, my background is I went to school to become a lawyer and decided to not go that route, and started consulting with businesses at the state and local level. And there was a time where businesses wanted to scale from, state and local government to started doing, multi-million-dollar federal contracts. And I decided to do a little research and started to tap into that market, and the rest was history, if you will.
Tell me a little bit about the working for government contracts, because I mean we're living in pretty weird times when it comes to government and money and funding and doing things in that nature. There's so much money that's accessible through government programs. You researched and you went in. You make it sound so easy. How easy is it to actually get into the federal contracting game?
Well, I started in the game back in 2008 timeframe. Where it was a little bit different landscape in terms of administration, those that were in the White House, and the types of contracts that were available out there to be pursued. So, moving to, I guess, the Washington, D.C. area, it took knowing somebody that was in that space, for me anyway. And I knew a guy that was a retired Air Force colonel who was, his job when he was in the military was acquisitions. And those acquisitions helped me to understand government contracting. So it is, when you understand business, it's simple, in terms of looking at an RFP, responding to an RFP, and making sure that your response hit all the highlights of what they're asking for. But it is, just that simple.
And scaling is one thing. Okay, you got the hookup, somebody, you're able to get into the contracting, federal contracting. But how did you scale that? How do you go from getting approved for one contract, maybe another contract here and there, to like fully scaling to have over $1 billion in revenue like you got?
Yeah, so for me, we don't do any business directly with the federal government. So we act as like similar to a private equity firm, where we take minority shares of a company, go into their infrastructure, provide a set of services, and then leverage those set of services to kind of grow the infrastructure based on our knowledge of the industry, our relationships. And then in some cases, our set-asides that we have access to, and in this particular case, the Native Hawaiian. So if you know anything about government contracting, there are certain dollars that have to be spent with certain groups of individuals. And part of those individuals that make up is the Native Hawaiian communities.
Let me, in case people are unaware of what managed services are. You kind of hinted on there a little bit right now in your description, but what makes Lawelawe's approach to managing these services different from like a traditional firm that's going to like outsource it?
Yeah, so the difference is that we could come in and kind of set our services on top of what you already have going on. And in some cases, small businesses that are in this government space and haven't really scaled to that $20-30 million a year threshold, they don't really have the tools in place or the resources in place. So therefore, what we're able to do is give them a subset of these resources, i.e. accounting, access to legal, security, contracts, templates and that type of thing. And that is utilize that to be able to help them further what they're doing, and then focus on the business where we might focus on those managed services.
So that's interesting. Tell me about your ideal client then. Who's the perfect candidate that would benefit from coming in with either having the services that you manage, or on the flip side, taking advantage of the different services that you offer?
Well, I say any business that's interested, one, in doing business with the government, or any business in general that's just looking to scale or to grow their business, be it GovCon or private industry. The company doesn't necessarily have to be a government contractor, but it helps, take advantage of some of the certain set asides. But our ideal client is a company that doesn't have that lacks resources, and we are able to provide those resources.
And when you're looking at companies, are you talking like blue collar companies like constructions, HVAC? Are you talking about those kinds of contracts, or what kind of contracts are you really niching down into?
We're agnostic to the types of contracts there are, because the fact that we take advantage of certain set asides, we're able to overlay, say, the Native Hawaiian status to any business, be it, blue collar, white collar, it doesn't matter. We have clients that are anywhere from construction firms to IT firms to accounting firms doing fraud and forensics.
And how big are these organizations? Because every time when I think of a company that's doing government contracts, I always envision this big old conglomerate type thing. But what's like that minimum viable business that can benefit from something like this?
Well, typically what we do, ideal client for us is a company that is in what they call the Small Business Administration's 8A space. And when they're in that 8A space, they have a window to basically go out and get all the contracts they can within that 8A realm. And that time limit is 9 years. And once they come out of that program, they cannot go back into that program. But the caveat to that is that once a contract is in the 8A program, it has to stay in the 8A program. So typically what would happen is a company graduating out of the 8A program would stand to lose those 8A contracts if they don't have a balance of 8A work versus non-8A work. And then that's where we could come in and support them with, that 8A status, if you will.
And just to clarify, when you were talking earlier about how some of these government contracts require you to spend money in certain areas, I mean, that's how government accounting works almost all the time anyways. That's where this 8A space comes into play, right? This is where, this is a designation that the government's saying, we're going to allow these funds, but they have to be in this section.
Correct. Yeah. So it's Section 8A. And usually it's, for, certain groups of individuals or minority groups, if you will. But there's another designation that kind of goes above and beyond that, which there is, community development corporations, which are typically, some nonprofits, if you will. There's Alaskan Native Indians, and then there's American Indians, and then there is Native Hawaiians. And with those, one of those four designations, that puts you in a different category, if you will, of set-asides, where a typical regular 8A is only able to get, say, a $4.5 million direct award, where over here in this native space, you can go up to $100 million without any J&A or justification, if you will.
So how do you guys identify and prioritize which verticals you're going to expand under to like grow your portfolio? You talked about getting, minority shares and kind of growing these things. And how do you decide what goes into your portfolio?
Well, again, I always say, we're agnostic, and typically I'm looking at any company that, is hungry, right? But then they lack the resources or the knowledge to go after certain contracts, but they might have relationships, right? So, in the Washington, D.C. area, everything is about relationships, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So without a relationship, sometimes people won't even have a meeting with you. But, if that client or that company has, been out there combing the bushes, then, what we try to do is give them the tools to have those relationships hit the easy button.
It's funny how that works in business, how we all try to start doing it ourselves at the beginning. And then we realize somewhere along the way, wisdom kicks in and you're like, oh, wait, if I had a team member that actually knew that section better than I would, we'd probably advance a lot better. There's always going to be mistakes like that are made in business, especially when you're trying to scale. Taking a business from 0 to $1 million is one set of skills. And then $1 million to $5 million is another set of skills. 5 million, 10 million is a different set of skills. And I'm sure you've dealt with a lot of mistakes as people grow and begin to scale. What are some of those big mistakes that you see people make, and how are you helping them correct those?
Well, a lot of times people think when they branch over into the federal space that business is just going to automatically come to them. Mm-hmm. And that is a far cry from the truth, right? You still have to get out and comb the bushes and kind of do your own due diligence and, knock on doors and, shake hands and kiss babies, if you will. So that's one of the biggest misconceptions, that, just because you have a certain designation that you're automatically guaranteed certain contracts. And that's not the case.
No, the guarantee in business is a false. That's never going to happen. You're never going to have something that you think is going to be there forever. I mean, you even talked about how in that 8A section that you only got 9 years, so nothing's going to be going forever. But that brings me to like that continuity type question. Do you have like a succession plan that you go over with either some of these companies as they continue to grow, or maybe for yourself in your business? What's your approach to kind of creating that lasting continuity in an organization?
Yeah, so what we try to do is, obviously we like to get in early on. Typically sometimes business owners, they don't want to hear what they're doing wrong. So if we're able to come in early on, identify, a plan of action, say within your 6-year time frame of being into the program, then that gives us time to kind of lay the groundwork for a good succession plan or exit strategy in some cases. So what we typically, try to work with them on is, again, leveraging the 8A as much as possible with whatever contracts, and then also forming new relationships through joint venture partnerships with other companies within our portfolio.
Contracting, working with people, it sounds like it could be pretty intimidating. Federal contracting in itself could be a beast. So what would you suggest for new or small firms that are trying to get in this space? What should they know before stepping into this arena? Well,
they should know that one is that they don't have to go it by themselves, right? And two, by having an organization like Lawelawe Management Group, this is what we do for a living. We basically put the pieces of the puzzle together that kind of help you get where you need to get to, whether or not that's, a $2 million contract or a $100 million contract. So we try to, work with you within that time frame to get you through that last trimester, if you will, as you exiting the program. And then we try to diversify your portfolio, meaning that, get you other contracts that are not necessarily within the 8A realm, so that you can compete within that middle tier of business once you come up out of the 8A program.
Curious, what happens after that 9 years? Does the company, I mean, we talked a little bit about succession plans. You kind of hovered a little bit about what happens after that 9 year time frame, but I mean, it would suck to lose all those contracts, right?
That's typically what would happen if you didn't have a succession plan or a relationship. Then a contracting officer would usually go put it out for a recompete on the street to another 8A firm. But a lot of times, these contractors, the people that work on the contracts, they might see, in a period of, say 5 to 7 years, maybe 2-3 different contractors that have actually had that particular contract.
Let me ask you about technology. We're living in the world of AI. Things are drastically changing. I can't say the same for like all government stuff. I mean, that takes a while for them to kind of adapt and move in. But technology does play a role in either how you're operating as a business, how you're delivering products, how you guys implementing technology, or what kind of role does it actually play as you work with different managed services that you deliver?
Yeah. So one of the things that I identified early on is where we were headed. And, even though we started out, say, as a paper company, shelf company, if you will, I knew that, we were going to be, hundreds of millions, billions of dollars in contract. There was no doubt in my mind. So what we tried to do is surround ourselves with the best of class of softwares, if you will, to include, various accounting systems, legal programs where we're tied into, the top attorneys in the DMV area. As well as, we're now leveraging AI to automate some of those back office, HR and accounting functions to kind of speed the process and make it more efficient for businesses.
Those things definitely need to get better, and AI definitely taking some of those medial tasks off your plate anyways. Now, you've taken minority shares in a lot of different companies, helping them become more successful by allowing them to scale, which means you sit on multiple boards. You literally have access to talking to different industries about different problems, different entrepreneurs going to different things at different levels. How does that influence your leadership style, your strategic thinking, and how you operate as you look at new ventures today?
Well, I often say it's a gift and a curse. Right. It's, obviously, anytime there's an opportunity, that's a gift. Right. But it's a curse because for me, it's nothing that I can't do, in my head. So I'm constantly, wanting to do it bigger, better, faster, and just taking on more. So that is, serving on boards has allowed me to, have an open mind, a broader perspective. Into a lot of different other areas that I may not have otherwise been able to have access to. And when you have that insight for that, in amongst that full spectrum, then you're able to, curtail what you're doing or what we're doing at Lawelawe to kind of, see where the market might be going, and then kind of be innovative to some of our approaches and some of the customers that we might bring in.
Now, it looks like you got a couple years on you like me, less hair, a little more gray coming in, right? Like that stuff naturally happens. You get the wisdom. This is the experience that you end up having over time. I teach a class called financial algebra. It's 17-year-old high school students. They just it's their senior year in high school. I get to teach them kind of some of the basics, how to buy a house, file your tax returns, buy a car, those types of things. And it's cool to see them graduate and start to get out in the world, especially since I sprinkle a lot of the entrepreneur stuff in there. And so as they approach graduation and start to get ready to live their lives, some of them are jumping into this entrepreneurial game. If you can take the wisdom and experience you have now and share it with a 17-year-old kid who's maybe about to step into the entrepreneurial world in 2025, what advice would you give them?
I would say, one, keep an open mind, and then don't let your surroundings limit you. The world is much bigger, say, than, where we're living at in our particular city. And I had to get out, understand that as a youngster coming up, growing up in the the inner cities of Chicago, and then then doing that, that gives you more options, as a youngster, as an entrepreneur, to maybe not just be a local business, but a statewide business, or multi-state, or international, for that matter.
I know there's always that feeling of imposter syndrome that happens, especially for the young kids that are getting started. But it happens, I feel like, at every level of entrepreneurship. Every time you step up and you start to move into that next game, you always feel like, do I even belong here? Am I supposed to be here? Take me back to the younger you. You're becoming an entrepreneur. Maybe you hit a big road bump. Maybe you have a little success. What's the worst part that you had to go through? And then when did you know you made it?
I think the worst part for me is that I've always been a person that my word is my bond. And, I never really dealt in contracts. If I told you that I'm going to do something, then, you can bet your life on it that I'm going to come through and do it. But, as you grow up in business, sometimes, you have to make sure that the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. And, what I say, is interpreted that, and the person on the other end understands that. So for me, it was a rude awakening when other individuals didn't reciprocate, or didn't have that set of morals, if you will, that, let your word be your bond. And that was a hard lesson for me to take. So, you had to start moving a little bit differently. And that's what I did. And for me, success was at a point where I was able to see residuals over work that I had, gotten for clients, and was able to, sit back and, figure out my next move because I didn't have to worry about getting that next client right away.
That's a good feeling of, I think when people first get started in business, I always equate it to like a lottery ticket, right? You have this idea in your head of this business that you're going to operate. And it's very much like when you buy a lottery ticket, all of a sudden you start thinking, oh, what house am I going to buy? What car am I going to drive? Where am I going to live? And all that is great for having that vision and giving you an idea of where you want to go forward. But oftentimes I think people get stuck being busy and becoming self-employed versus building a business. And I love what you said there when you have that residual and you have customers coming in, because I think that's a big differentiator between being a solopreneur and actually having a business. And I think the difference is, on the one hand, when you're a solopreneur, you're waiting for that next referral. You're hoping that next lead comes in, and it's a very hope-oriented game. You're not really going out and grabbing those customers, versus when you have a business, you now have a tool or a system in place that new customers are always coming in. You've built that, and it gives you that ability to scale, which is what you've been doing with companies. When you talk to people on a regular basis, how do you help them change, or even if they want to change, from being that solopreneur to actually having the business they envisioned when they bought that lottery ticket?
Well, I think success, when they see how successful you've become, right? And a lot of this is public knowledge or public information. Then they want to know, what could they emulate, right? What gems can you drop that they might be able to use, in doing various aspects of their business, right? And then when they're able to be humble enough to, take those jewels and apply them, then they, it opens, further dialogue to, other conversations on, well, what about this, or what about that scenario? And, it usually turns into like an informal mentorship type of thing.
You think it ever has to do, maybe it's just me, but it's that shiny object syndrome, that ADD. You're like, you're doing something really, really well. And then you're like, ooh, I can also do this. And then your attention shifts over here. And then you're like, ooh, I can also do this. And then you never really get good at the one thing, which avoids, which prevents you from actually building something at scale. How often do you talk to entrepreneurs who just lack that focus?
Well, a lot of times, and talking with other entrepreneurs, success for me wasn't necessarily tied to a dollar. Success for me was that, I could keep my wife home and my kids out of daycare. And as long as I could do that, then I'm fine. Sometimes people's priorities are not necessarily where they need to be at, right? And sometimes they have to refocus, if you will, to figure out where it is that they're going and how they're going to get there. And sometimes they get off track with doing 1,001 things. But if you continue to look at what the end objective is and how do you get to the end objective, and then take baby steps. It may not be leaps and bounds, but take baby steps to get you where you need to go. Then you'll definitely see the rewards. And that's kind of been my spiel or my philosophy to date, and has helped many.
Yeah, consistency is the key. I was talking about this to somebody earlier, but it was gym related, and we were talking about he was saying, because I've been working out quite a bit for the last few years, and he was asking me, what are you doing this? Do you lift a lot of weight, heavy? I was like, I learned from a bodybuilder, you don't have to lift heavy weight, because if I get older, as I get older, heavier weight might get hurt, right? But you can make the weight heavier. And how you position, how you look at the things kind of alter how you move forward. It's just the baby steps. It's the consistency. It's the moving forward that's going to get you to that next level. Speaking of next, what do you have in store for Lawelawe? Any expansions or innovations in the horizon? What should we be watching for? Yeah,
well, we just expanded to another office in Chantilly, Virginia. About 14,000 square feet, where we have a lot of our back office functions out of. But one of the things that we're launching within the next 30 to 45 days is called the Level Up Academy. And part of this Level Up Academy is that, we're going to take businesses in and basically run them through a program, an informal mentorship program where they have access to, the infrastructure that we have. And, it's subscription based. So that's one of the biggest things that we're looking forward to this year and launching the Level Up Academy.
The Level Up Academy. Jerald, if people want to find out more about what you're doing, about the Level Up Academy, about getting some government contracts and learning to scale from a mentor like you, what can they do?
Yeah, so just go to our website, www.lawelawe, and that's LAWELAWEMG for managementgroup.com. And there's a section on there, or will be a section on there to sign up or send us an email or even give us a call.
That's it. Ladies and gentlemen, scaling doesn't have to be the most difficult thing in the world. You can do it, especially if you find a mentor who's already done it. Make sure you guys go to lawelawemg.com, and that's LAWELAWEMG.com. Find out more about that information, because look, at the end of the day, Jerald's been doing this for a long time. He has a success track record, clients that he's already worked with. And anytime you're looking for a mentor, you always have to start with that conversation, because you never know what opportunities are open there. So Lawelawe Management, that is the name of the company, but lawelawemg.com is where you want to go, lawelawemg.com. Jerald, any last quotes, thoughts, ideas before we head out?
No, I think I enjoyed the conversation, and hope that listeners will enjoy it as well. And if I spark any interest that you would like to further, I'm here to help. My philosophy in life is, your success is my success.
Appreciate it, Jerald. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, government's got some money to give out. You want to learn how to do it? lawelawemg.com. Make sure you guys find out. Go make that money. That's all we got for you guys today. Peace.
Thank you.
We're out.
It's over. Go home.
Is your business in need of marketing? Try starting a podcast. But not just any podcast. Podcast like a pro. We can show you how to take your business from being invisible to becoming a brand people trust. Go to www.businessbros.biz